I saw other questions on there about, they were talking about drug usage, and I mean, we all had to use them to be at the level we were at, but I always got more out of less, because if I didn't feel athletic and I felt like I couldn't breathe, or I felt my blood pressure was too high, I was weaker, no matter how much that took. But I never could understand. I had been in a couple of seminars, we don't need to name names, of the top lifters at that time, raw, back in the early 2012 to 14, and they're prescribing people to take 1 gram of test per 100 pounds of body weight. And I'm like, fuck that.
So I didn't understand a lot of that shit either, because, you know, I erred on the wrong side and learned the same way everybody else does. Like, I can't breathe.
Right.
You know, and some of the things too, I remember, we would switch out and we'd take anadrol before a meet. So it's just a 50 milligram tablet or whatever. And it'd be like last 4 weeks, fucking muscle pulls, you know, people's noses are bleeding all over. And, you know, Louis like, this shit, this shit has to stop. You know, you guys are fucking, because everybody's like getting hurt and all this. And I'm like, oh, fuck it. We'll just take half, or we won't do it at all, you know, and switch it out. And then I'll hear things like, oh yeah, so-and-so's taking 300 milligrams. And I'm like, how in the hell are they doing that? Because what I learned is you can't, like you said, you can't breathe. No. If I can't breathe, there's not enough oxygen to recover. So my recovery was tanking.
There you go.
So I had to find this sweet optimal range.
There's a sweet spot. And the problem with the sweet spot is it's different for everybody. In my opinion, once you go over 1,000 on your blood work on test, you know, so an average person's between like 250 and 800. Once you go over 1,000, it's diminished returns, just like anything else. Right? Just because you can do 20 sets of squats, like you and Chuck probably did that one time, it doesn't mean that 8 sets you could have stopped and probably got better.
No, that was stupid. I mean, that was just the shit that would happen that we were talking about. Did it help? Did it not help?
But the problem with our society, whether it's training or drugs, is we think more is better. And in reality, only optimal is better. And once you hit that optimal point, and I want to make another big statement on this, is drugs, in my opinion, are only give you a capacity of maybe 10 or 15% more than what you got now. Do not take that shit when you bench 300.
Oh yeah.
You're going to bench 350. Who gives a shit? Now, if you're benching 585 raw and you take drugs, you can bench 700. I understand that equation. I do not understand the equation. I mean, half the people that ask us about drugs, they're not even in the zone to take those fucking drugs.
Well, that, and I also say you can only flip that card once.
Only once.
Right? So the one thing, the example I've noted many times is when I was sponsoring lifters and the WPO was big. Yeah. A bunch of them came up to me. I mean, just through the years, and they tell me they're drug free, and I'm like, there's no goddamn way they're lifting what they're lifting. And then over a period of probably 9 to 12 months, each one of them said, you know, I think it's time for me to go on. And it made me mad, because I'm like, I felt like you all think I'm fucking stupid, like this is some joke that they're making, like this is bullshit. Yeah. And every one of them's total went up over 250 pounds. And I'm like, holy shit.
Maybe they were.
They were, you know, and I'm like, I can't believe that. But that card can only be turned once. Yep. The other thing I did notice was, you know, when I aired on the other side where I couldn't recover and all the other stuff, the injuries and all the other stuff, I had to find a higher dose. I bloated more. So then it's, okay, I need to find this optimal range, but another way to get bloated, because that bloat, it changes leverage.
Well, and then once you're dealing with equipment, maybe your equipment doesn't fit anymore.
Exactly.
And that's a big problem too. Yes. That's why you saw so many guys in that era not be able to touch in their shirts, is because they'd be at one size to fit the shirt. They might touch, say, 700. Then they get on a bunch of anadrol or whatever. They get puffy, and now they're an inch and a half thicker, in a denim shirt. You're fucked. So that was the big issue with the equipment side. On the raw side, I think the drugs were more crazy when I went into raw than they weren't equipped.
Really?
Oh, by far. The stuff I was telling you about 100,000 milligrams per 100 pounds body weight, I was hearing that from raw lifters, like top guys. And I'm like, there's no fucking way I'm taking that much, number one. Number two, how can you even feel like you can finish a meet, let alone squats?
Well, I question if it's real.
Yeah, then you wonder if it's real. But then my question is why, and I've never been this way, but if it wasn't real, why would you stand up and tell 30 people that?
Yeah.
Because to me, that wouldn't be a terrible thing to do, because now you're putting everybody's health at risk to tell a lie.
Yeah, I don't know if they know it's real or not. You know, to be honest, they may think it is, but that was like the anadrol thing. You know, even like the D-ball type thing. It's, you know,
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I would see so many people take, you know, say one anadrol and then go to 2 anadrol, and shit would be tearing and noses would be bleeding. And then all of a sudden 100 milligrams is a normal dose, but people need to take 300. I'm questioning if it's actually
real
that.
Or if it's a 10 mil and they think it's a 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And for those listening, anadrol, in my opinion, is the most powerful anabolic oral steroid. But the problem with it is that most people don't understand is, one, you can only load it for a very short period of time. And two, the adrenal fatigue associated with anadrol post-cycle is nothing short of insane. I remember, like, I'd get done with a meet, and I'd run a half, do a 25, half of 50 milligram anadrol 5 days out, and I was fucking, like, depressed for about 3 weeks after a contest. And then I try it without the anadrol and no depression. And I'm like, this stuff's not good for the average person at all. Like, I would say if the one drug to stay away from, unless you're trying to break an all-time world record, is do not fucking touch anadrol.
Yeah, but there's a whole bunch of people with the mentality that are going to hear that and say, well, that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we're trying to say is that's no. It's for recovery.
Yeah.
If you're recovering from session to session and you have built-in ways to know, right? For me, you know, my max effort, if my max effort was going well, my speed went well on speed day. Yeah. If my max effort was going to shit, I knew, you know, or if my speed work was going to shit, I had to look at the max effort day, and vice versa.
Yeah. They're both synergistic.
Yes. So that way I had checks and balances. Am I recovering? Is this moving forward? And at certain points, am I moving forward too fast? Because if I am, I better slow it down.
Well, that's another key point, because like you're hitting on, muscles grow faster than ligaments and tendons. Yes. So if you're getting extremely strong, extremely fast, you better watch the connective tissue. Yep. Because now you're going to have injuries. Yep. And that's what, I'll go into my personal experience. I squatted 826 in the IPF completely drug-free. Whether you can believe it or not, it doesn't matter. I take my first cycle, I go to my first WPO semifinals in 2004, and I squat 903. Pretty big jump. But after that point, I went from 900 in 1 year to 920 to 980 to 1,003 to 1,030 to 1,050, 1,085. The first year I broke the all-time world record in the total. 1,100, 1,110, and then it took me 12 months later to squat 1,200. My point is I only ever got that one big jump one time. The rest of it took a year to put another 50 pounds on, which if you have a good training cycle and you're at that level, 50-pound gain in a squat in 12 months is really good.
That's really good. That's what I don't think people, now if your technique's off, you can jump faster, but that's why when we hit those points that we were talking about earlier, that's why we're both, our minds are like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, well, believe it if you want, but 826 to 903 was, I took 2 cc's of cypionate, and then I would load this half of a 50 milligram anadrol about 2 weeks out. And I did that my entire fucking career. So I knew after about 950, it wasn't the drugs anymore. It was a training.
Yes.
Because I had all the factors accounted for, and the drug stayed the same, because every time I tried to ramp it up, I would never ramp it up close to a meet because I didn't know how it would affect me. So I would try different things in the off season and realize, no, this makes me feel way too bad. I can't do this. I had to feel athletic walking on the stage, not bloated and fucked up. And that's what people don't understand. The drugs really only enhance the bloating and the fucked up. And if that level's too high and the blood pressure's too much and your heart rate's too high, you're not recovering from anything. And that's where the drugs actually reverse. So there's only that optimum amount. Now, here's the thing. I think pro bodybuilders tend to be able to take way more genetically and have an advantage to that, and not have as many, obviously with a lot of the deaths lately, but you see guys that are bodybuilders can take more milligrams and it tends to put on more mass. But for powerlifting, you have to be very careful because you have to still feel athletic. And that's what I have seen over the years talking with Flex and Stan is like, when you're training like a bodybuilder, because you do a little bit more isolated type shit, it doesn't matter you can't breathe. When you're under a squat with 1,000 pounds and balance is crucial for you to survive, it's a big difference.
The other big takeaway is with all those money meets, when they started coming in, the multiply money meets, the biggest thing I would tell all the guys that we were sponsoring, however you want to say that, was whoever goes in the healthiest wins.
Yep.
Bottom line.
Yep.
Because you're in the warm-up room and my back's jacked. Well,
but you saw me at all those prize money meets. How much healthier did I look than everybody else?
Yes. Well, joint health, everything. How many things?
And who won?
Exactly.
See?
That's the thing is everybody's going to have, scrapes and dings going into a meet. It's normal. But whoever has the least at that level, wins.
Yep.
Whoever can breathe and recover between squat and bench and dead wins.
Yep.
You know, so it wasn't at that level so much about getting stronger.
Yep.
It's going in to display the strength you haven't been able to display in the past because you weren't conditioned.
Yeah.
You were too beat up or whatever it
or
was.
you didn't approach it strategically.
Yes.
Right.
And I think a lot of lifters fuck up too because they'll go to a meet, say it's leveled down, say they go to the meet and they smoke 700. Well, then they base all their training off 780. They could have done.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, you did the 700. You know, I can make an argument. You might want to base your training if you've smoked it on exactly what you did or maybe even a little less.
So that's a great point. So I'll give you another big gold mine tip. So when I would train for a contest, I would hit, say when I hit the first world record raw squat, for example, I did 832. When I did that, the next cycle to squat 865 and break the record again, I based it off of 800, not 832. All the numbers to the training. Because I knew that saving that 30 pounds, or let's just say 5% off of that top, I was always going to recover better from the workouts. And I was less beat up.
You know, that was one of the conversations that after I squatted 9, Louie and I were driving back from Harrisburg, and it was easy. And I'm already like, man, we should do what cycles we should do. And he's like, well, what do you think you could have squatted? And I'm like, you tell me. I don't fucking remember. I don't see it.
Right.
So, well, you could have squatted 940, 950.
Was that at the Mountaineer?
No, this was at the IPA Nationals in Harrisburg.
Got it.
And he said, well, you could have squatted 950. And I'm like, well, then I'm like, he's like, no, listen to me. You don't hear what I'm saying. Why don't you do the same shit again and actually get the 950 instead of increasing
and possibly overtrain and get beat up or injured.
Yes. Yeah. But then, 3 years later, we end up putting 800 more pounds on bar, so, and that made sense to me because it's like, okay, this makes sense. I don't have to change this final 4-month dynamic wave. That can stay the same. If I go in exactly the same condition which isn't easy, but do that, then pick up what I should have had. That's less wear and tear.
Absolutely.
And that made sense. It's like, okay, cool. I get that. But most people I don't think understand that.